The Grassroots Leadership Conference, held November 9th and 10th, 1963, changed the lives of a collection of Detroit's most progressive activists and also the trajectory of where activism in Detroit changed for Black people. This organization included Grace Lee Boggs, James Boggs, Reverend Albert Clegg, eventually Reverend Jeramogi, Richard and Milton Henry, eventually the Obedelli brothers, Reverend Harold Hunt, Helen Kelly, Gwendolyn Kemp, Francis Knox, and Reginald Wilson. This conference was important because 1963 was such an impactful year in the struggle at the time. This was a Black Power year, a Civil Rights year, and so many other things were happening. And it was ripples all the way up to Detroit, from Birmingham, Alabama, witnessing the police brutality in the newspapers and on the television. And then when you see a church get bombed with 4 little girls in it, it was time to activate. It was time to hit the streets. It was time to rally, even here in the city of Detroit. After one rally received not the support that it deserved, it led to what became the Grassroots Leadership Conference.
I discovered the work of James Boggs and Grace Lee Boggs in the 1990s when I was researching African American history as a graduate student at the University of Texas. I used a lot of James Boggs' work in completing my dissertation titled Ours Too Was a Struggle for a Better World, Activist Intellectuals During the Black Power Movement. This led to me becoming a professor at the University of Michigan, where I teach African American history, and I became a member of the James and Grace Lee Boggs Center. I edited a collection of James Boggs' writings, and I continue to be inspired by them, leading to me writing a biography of the two of them, titled In Love and Struggle, The Revolutionary Lives of James and Grace Lee Boggs. I believe it's important that we commemorate the Grassroots Leadership Conference 60 years ago because of the amazing work that this group of organizers did in putting together this massive event in less than 60 days. They brought together dozens of activists from across the country to discuss, debate, and plan the movement ahead. And they brought in Malcolm X to deliver the closing speech. His speech, Message to the Grassroots, is one of, if not the most famous speeches that Malcolm X ever delivered. Join us this November as we commemorate this anniversary of the speech and the conference that occasioned it. And we look at the organizing that went into that and let it inspire us today. Hello, and welcome to the James and Grace Lee Boggs Center to Nurture Community Leadership. And to this program, Messages from the Grassroots, an Intergenerational Conversation. Today's conversation is the culminating event of a series of things that we've done throughout the year under the banner of the Year of Visionary Organizing, commemorating the 60th anniversary of many things that took place in the year 1963. Including the Northern Negro Grassroots Leadership Conference, which Malcolm X gave his speech, Message to the Grassroots, with James and Grace Lee Boggs and others were the main organizers for. In that moment, in November 1963, they were speaking about grassroots movement building at that time. Today, sparked by that example and by the history that they created, we will be discussing the ways in which people are thinking and doing and creating grassroots movement work today. In a moment, Myrtle Thompson Curtis, or Mama Myrtle, will be moderating, leading us in this conversation with our panelists. Before that, we have a poem which will be read to us by Madison Ware. Please bring up Madison.
Hey everybody, I'm Madison Ware, I'm Myrtle's granddaughter. I'm going to be reading Saying Solidarity in Practice to y'all. But first, I just wanted to be noted that this poem is the exact same as it was when I originally received it. So Shay, I hope you appreciate what I did with it. We are becoming our breathing, in which helps us stay focused. We are becoming the ways in which we belong to one another. As we become awakened to the world, we are both fire and ceasefire, porous and unafraid of play, a chorus singing in solidarity. We free ourselves as we're led by our inner truth. A legacy that we create helps shape us into the people we were always meant to be. The full embrace of our anger and love makes us dangerous to empire. We are becoming soft and unguarded in our hearts, breathing miracles into the world. We are liminal as we come together now, regardless of what others may say. The care we give to one another makes us feel like wind and brings us the joy and strength necessary to become the leaders we need. We are the sacred medicine for this world and the balm for ancient wounds. One name ready to bloom again and again, unashamed and courageous to step forward and free. As we start to realize who we are as individuals, we can come together to become whole. Take care.
All right, thank you, Madison. You did a wonderful job. And again, welcome everybody. And I am not going to be that moderator that over moderates. I'm going to be that moderator that will ask direct questions. This will be a wonderful intergenerational conversation. And I'm just going to say that the format that we're having today is going to be 2 30-minute panels. So we'll have 30 minutes together. We have our 3 speakers who will introduce themselves. And that will be followed by, after both panels, we will be followed by collective discussion with audience participation. So at this time, I'm going to allow each one of you at least 1 or 2 minutes to introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about you, and we'll get right into the questions. So if that's okay with you, one housekeeping note, there's restroom that way. All right, thank you. So would we start all the way to the right?
Thanks, y'all. I hope I'm talking loud enough in the speaker. Just let me know. Greetings to everyone joining via live stream as well. My name is Trinity Watson. Pronouns are she and her. I guess I'll start with my professional background. I currently work at the Detroit Justice Center as a development assistant, and I also here repping Burwood House, which is a nonprofit on the west side of Detroit. Shout out to my mentor, Kim Shirogi, in which we essentially grow the spirit and soul of community in that space. Beyond my labor, I would define myself as a writer, a memory maker and worker, and an archivist. So what I mean by that is I deeply believe that there's so many possibilities rooted in our memories and in our past, present, and future. So I'm very interested in just the analysis of where time can take us and where it can bridge us for us. So I want to say very grateful to be in this space with my colleagues and to have this conversation today with y'all.
Thank you. All right.
Peace, y'all. Good afternoon. My name is Adrian. I use any pronoun. I am here repping Feed the Freedom Growers. So proud of that.
All right.
I'm a part of FFG. All of my work, my life, my love, my organizing efforts are all rooted and based on here in the East Side or on the East Side at Feed the Freedom Growers. And this includes wellness spaces. I'm a Reiki teacher. And I've started a free Reiki clinic at Feed and Freedom Growers. I believe in people's programs. I believe in revolution. I'm a student of socialist liberation. I believe in the merger of wellness and revolution intentionally in all of my work. I believe deeply in political education. And I believe that movements cannot be sustained, and organizing revolution, which is an ongoing process, cannot be sustained without being informed through political education and practice. And I'm proud to be here with FFG repping, and yeah, I'm just here to share my thoughts, and I hope something resonates with y'all today.
Thank you. All right, clap it up.
Good afternoon. It's still afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm just happy to be in the minority up here. Because all too often I sit on panels and moderate panels where it's just a bunch of us dudes. And so I'm really happy to be here. Orlando Bailey is my name. I'm a son of Detroit, specifically a son of the East Side. born, raised, and still residing. So I heard somebody say something over there. You say, hey, yes, that's right. We always looking for family. I am a journalist and storyteller. You know, the thing that I often say, I think Mama Myrtle has heard me say this before, and Kyrie's definitely heard me say this, is that the griot is urgent, right? And as a storyteller and as a journalist, I believe it, number one, my job to document the observation, to document the movement, to document story. I love what Trinity said about being an archivist. I think right now, what I'm hyper focused on is that, you know, the white power structure is hell bent on creating an atmosphere where we have mass amnesia. And we suffer from massive erasure of our movement, erasure of our literature, the whitewashing of our legacy. And I see my work as making it impossible for us to misremember, right? Impossible for us to not be remembered, impossible for our work to be erased. And so professionally, I serve as the director of engagement at bridgedetroit.com. Check this out. I get to sit with one of my good friends every single week on Monday nights and record the Authentically Detroit podcast alongside Donna Gibbs Davidson. We will meet in the second panel. And whenever I have the opportunity, I go and I sit under my grandma and I listen to her tell me about a Detroit that I didn't get to see. So.
All right, thank you. Those are great.
Can I say something real
Sure,
quick?
this is a conversation. Go have at it.
Okay, I don't feel right starting without saying peace and light to all the spirits lost in Palestine.
Yeah.
I can't start anything without saying that. My heart is broken. Right now, I'm speaking from a place of heartbreak today, but that's where my truth is going to come from. So I just wanted to honor those people. All power to the people.
All right, we want to acknowledge where your heart is at, and I think a lot of us are there as well. And I think that's why that poem was chosen, that we're not being dismissive or oversight. So, and with that, I think the first question, I didn't know which question to go to first, so I'm going to start with the one at the top. You all had an opportunity to look at the question.
Yes.
You ready?
Ready as we can be.
All right, so just jump in there or raise your hand, or I could, see who's really itching to go. So how do you understand your role in community and movement building? How do you understand your role in community and movement building?
Why are y'all looking over here?
I looked left, I looked right.
Y'all are funny. I can start. Yeah.
Two-part question now, so there will be more. So.
Right. Thank you, Mama. I would define my role in community. I guess something that really comes up for me is first an observer of community. When I graduated from school and then came back to Detroit, I think I was just struck by the speed and motion of movement and the role relationship plays in that. And also understanding that I feel like Detroiters are folks that, we take our time or we really feel out people that are coming into our community. So I think when I think about my own role is someone that moves with the speed of the folks that I am trying to be a part of, and really recognizing how do I know myself before I bridge relationship with other people. I think this word role is very important and significant because, and I know we haven't got to like the next question, but when we talk about revolution as well, right? I feel like the mentioning of roles is something that's always kind of overstepped or overlooked. Like everyone comes in movement space believing that they have to be Malcolm or they have to be Martin, but they don't think about the cooks or the caregivers or the stewards of the land that, made the movement truly possible. So I think truly my role in community comes from a space of knowing myself, being very aware of who I seek to become and how community can be a facilitator or a vessel towards my transformation. So I think I simply come as a human being with a deep curiosity around change. And I think through that role, that facilitates all the possibilities that I'm seeking for myself.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to have at it, or?
I'll see space for sure. Go for it.
Sure.
Mhm. Absolutely.
I see my role in community as someone who is a student first and foremost, a student of our elders, a student of our ancestors who have like laid out all this work. I don't believe nothing new under the sun is happening right now. And I believe that there are so many works that we can easily tap into that help us to forge a path forward about what is around us and to analyze the conditions right now. So first and foremost, I'm a student. Secondly, I'm an organizer and I'm a wellness practitioner. I believe that I'm here to serve the people, specifically through helping us to step into the capacity we need, helping the people step into the capacity that they need to engage in revolutionary organizing. And also not just helping the people step into that capacity, but building trust and relationship with the people first and foremost. Making sure that, you know, I'm open to critique and that I'm challenging my comrades to be open to critique from a loving place, thinking about how we talk to each other, being mindful, keeping myself in check, and being open to us keeping each other in check. So, and also just like being intentional with how we engage wellness and engage wellness as we do this work. I truly believe that we have to understand that if we cannot access the things that we need to be replenished and to be whole, and by access, I mean if those things aren't decommodified, that means you shouldn't have to look far and hard to be able to step into whatever you need for yourself, to then be able to step into something more engaging to shift the conditions around us. With that being said, I'm also here to dismantle empire. That is my role. I'm here to dismantle capitalism and imperialism more specifically. And that takes a lot of strategy. That takes a lot of intention and a lot of patience and work with each other.
It sounds like you're tapping into the third, fourth question, but
Mm.
we're gonna.
Some of my answers, I think, are gonna go into a lot of these things, but Orlando.
And can I hop in real quick? Because I think the word that you opened with like being a student, yeah, that really resonated. I think that was the word that I was, I couldn't put my name on, but I think everything you just said. First, thank you for your being and your existence and how you so clearly define your role. I think the role of the student is so significant because it allows us to have just a really deep posture of learning. And I think for myself, especially when I was first entering movement work, I felt like I had to, like I had to have my Black beret and I already had to be down with the cause and know X, Y, and Z and be at the front lines. But it took time for me to realize that like, that's not my role. I think the posture of the student gives you that space to really seep through and just look internal and think deeper about, okay, this is what I observe. This is what I'm learning. Now, how does this align with who I really am and what I have the capacity to do? So I just wanted to throw that in there because I think I definitely also am a student. And through like the 3 years I've been here, I guess I've been coming into a space of recognizing my role as being someone that unapologetically accepts their genius to be in service of the people.
Yes.
So
So
yeah.
I want to step in because you guys are all over the paper with all of the questions. And that's okay because this is a conversation. Because you're talking about being students and what you're learning, and the specific question is, what are you learning from your work? And as I think of Malcolm's speech and all of the chiding and challenges that he put up, the second part of that question is what questions and challenges have been emerging for you lately?
Mm.
Mm.
You want me to go?
Yeah,
Okay.
lead off.
Thank y'all. I mean, the conversation about role, I can go there. But one of the things you said, what are we learning about our work? One of the things that I'm learning about my current work is that I have to unlearn a lot of the stuff that I already learned, right? Especially when we begin to talk about, and as I begin to surgically look at narrative, right? The written word and how we describe ourselves, how we describe the barriers that exist that inhibit us from fully thriving, right? But also how we describe our people. And coming from the nonprofit community development world, right, there is a way that we are conditioned to describe our problems and to describe our people, right? Really from a deficit-based frame. I remember, and I'll never forget this. I started my career at Warren County Development Coalition as the youth development manager, and I was working with young folks. And so part of my job was to make sure that our work for young people was resourced. And so I had to write proposals for grants. And, the language that I was given is that we are working with at-risk youth. And if we don't intervene, our young people are at risk for this. And they live in this kind of marginalization without ever uplifting the spirit that resides on the inside of our young people, right? The love that resides, the curiosity that resides, the assets that they bring to the table. It was everything about what was wrong with them, right? Without ever acknowledging the systems that show up on the pavements of our neighborhoods. And so as I am in the business of narrative, as I am in the business of journalism, I am unlearning that way and correcting it, right? And starting from this place of abundance. We have so much spirit to invoke, so much joy to invoke, so many good things, the assets that we need to invoke. So what I'm learning is that for a long time, white normative narrative and even the narrative that we tell ourselves about each other has been rooted in deficit. And I am unlearning that. I am no longer describing us from a deficit-based frame, right? And so that's what I've been learning, right? When we think about Detroit and the narrative about Detroit, especially around bankruptcy, right? We all know that it was a systemic failure, right? And we all know that it was a stripping away of democracy, but that's not how the New York Times told it. That's not how Time Magazine told it. You, Black people in Detroit, were the problem. And that was diametrically opposed to the conditions and the people that I was working with every single day. Mama Myrtle, like you. I met Mama Myrtle. Mama Myrtle not responsible for what happened. Mama Myrtle was taking care of Manistee, right? And so when I began to build something, I think you said, Adrian, that relationship, because I got checked by a community member. She said, I know you say you do engagement, but before we get engaged, let's date. Let's get to know each other first, because you ain't engaging me yet. We gonna date first. We gonna build relationship.
We get to know one another.
Right. And so as building relationship with folks like Mama Myrtle and so many other amazing giants on the East Side, I realized that what we have been saying about us was not true. And I set out to change that and build a repository of content that reflects that.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Beautiful. I want to respond to that too. I love everything that you said. I just want to add to it some things that you brought up in me when you talked about how, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you said like how we view the people or how we view each other. Is that what you said?
Yeah, how we talk about each other.
How we talk about each other. I want to talk about that because I think a lot of the time when we see something happening, like we might see somebody walking around and they ain't got no mask on and COVID is rampant. We might see like all of these things that just like don't make sense to us. So we so ready to place blame on the individual instead of looking at things. Well, as far as instead of looking at things and asking what are the conditions that led to why this is the norm? What is the conditions that led to what people cannot access or can access as far as the political education or whatever other tools they need to understand why are people showing up this way? I think a lot of the times we treat each other from this individualistic standpoint and put blame on people through the individual instead of saying, okay, this is a system issue. This is the issue of capitalism. This is the issue, looking beyond and looking at it as a collective systemic problem. I wanted to say that. And then also just with relationship building, like thinking about, how do we even do that? And I think
Yeah.
that goes for me into something that I've struggled with in my work this year. Didn't do good with it this year, did good with it last year. That is, for me, relationship building with the people comes from serving the people. And this year, I've been challenging myself and my comrades to think about the work that we've done in 2023. And me personally, I think it's served the interests of other organizers, and it has not served the interests of the people. I have not seen anything too deeply result in collective material action. And what I mean by material action, I mean, what are the things that we are producing materially to address our material needs, the concrete programming. So that's how I serve the people personally. In 2022, like I started a Reiki clinic at FFG, which will start again next year. It was direct serving of the people, not just to meet the energetic needs of the people. That's important, but it's also so I can build trust. And so those people can have capacity to engage in something deeper. I can't ask you to engage in political education with me if you don't know me, don't trust me, and you ain't got the capacity because you're hungry, or don't have the capacity because your energetic needs are not met to think that you'll be able or want to even engage with me. So all those people that came in that door, so many people are now down with FFG and ready. People's programs are so important to me. That's how I build relationship. You brought up relationships, so I just had to think about that, and we taking up so much space. Go ahead.
No, I mean, we're panelists, right? That's what we supposed to do. Yeah, thank you for your brilliance. Adrian, what you have me thinking about is what Kim always says around stabilizing oneself in order to actualize. And I think this kind of brings me back to the question that Myrtle was asking about our learnings. I feel like I've been having a lot of deep learnings about the role care plays within our movements. And when I say care, I don't mean like, capitalist care with like the bath bombs and things like that. I mean like a very deeply,
Thank you, Trinity.
like everything is marketed in this world. But the care that I speak of is a very deep kind of spiritual practice that sustains my living both in this material world and beyond. I would say another role that I have, going back to your first question, is I'm a caregiver. So I've been a caregiver since I was a child, first to my parents, then to other family members, and et cetera, and then eventually to community. And then as I've kind of entered organizing spaces, like, from restorative justice and RJ, like all those different alternatives towards the current reality we're in, I had to come to terms with the fact that I'm learning all this knowledge, I'm doing all the trainings, but then when it comes to like the internal conflict or conflict with my personal relationships, I don't know how to show up. So that brought a lot of tension to me. Like, what does it mean for me to have this identity as like a care practitioner, but then I don't know how to take care of myself? So I think when it comes to the learnings, I think I've just really had to remove myself from certain spaces. Or like I said, when I first moved at home, I was like, I'm gonna go to all the events, make sure people know who I am. And that just resulted in my exhaustion. So I wasn't receiving what I needed. So I think just really thinking about the importance of care as a thread between the internal and external worlds, and knowing that I cannot be for the people if I don't yet know how to be for and with myself. So I think just acknowledging that, this work, this organizing work, this revolutionary work, this is care work. And it's really asking us, like, what do we need to survive this reality? But also, what is the inner work we're doing to assure before we even arrive out there, like, we're steady and stable within ourselves.
You can.
It's only gonna be
When
2
you
seconds.
guys, I have a response as well. So go
Okay.
ahead.
No, just about the care thing. Like, and this goes back to your question about roles. I see my role not only as a documenter, and I know that documentation is important. As I was revisiting all of my Malcolm X content, right? Malcolm X always referred to a piece of documentation, right? In his speeches, whether he was talking about a newspaper article, whatever. But the other role that I know that I live in my genius zone, right, is the role of convener, right? And that's a role that I picked up from my grandmother. And you were talking about care. My grandmother convened everybody in her family and in the neighborhood. Number one, to provide, number one, a safe space and a space of joy. So I try to start from joy. I try to start with a smile and love. But I remember asking my granny, why you always got 2, 3, 4 people living in your house, right? And she's like, because that's what we do. We care for each other. And so for her, convening everybody was, a part of her soul's work, to just see, number one, to do a temperature check on where everybody was, and to make sure that everybody was getting everything that they needed. And if you needed shelter, if she ascertained that you needed shelter, oh, well, you staying here tonight. And tonight turned into months and some years or whatever. But it was this tradition of care, right? This practicing of care. And so as I am a convener, and we practice care in that always.
All right, thank you. So I hear the word revolution, revolutionary, and I'm reflecting on what Malcolm said about being a revolutionary. He said if you knew what it was, you'd get back in the alley. He said we use this word really loosely. He said revolution is bloody. Revolution is about land. Malcolm also was a person who evolved, and he was taken way too soon. So we don't know the complete evolution. But I'm thinking, along with the work and what you've put out here, or laid out here for us, what critical questions around revolutionary planning, strategizing, and resource gatherings are you confronting today? 1 or 2 questions along that line of what it means if you really embrace that word revolutionary and all its evolutionary practices. What are some of the strategies in alignment with the other struggles for liberation across the globe?
So the question is, what are our strategies, and also what are some of our own questions that we have?
What are a critical question? Something to think about. What have you thought about? What are you asking yourself or others around revolutionary planning, strategizing, resource gathering that you're confronting today? What are some of those questions?
What are your ideologies?
And this will be our last question.
Okay. What are your ideologies? What are your politics? What are your values? How are you clear on that? How is that showing up? Not just in here, but in here and here with your hands as well. What are you building that will be a part of material action and concrete programming to shift material conditions? What is power? Do you understand power? Do you know what that means and how to step into it? Who are your comrades? And how do you serve the people, first and foremost?
Thank you, Adrienne.
I guess the question that I stew over around revolution is, in 2023 in America and in Detroit, the largest Black city in the nation, is revolution still bloody? Right? Like, do we still have to have bloodshed when we've already had so many martyrs? Right? That's one question that I'm constantly thinking about. And we know that when we talk about blood, we talk about violence. Is it that in 2023? I don't know. That's my existential question. When we talk about strategy, one of the things I've never heard Malcolm X described as this, but I describe him as an Afrofuturist, right? Because he often talked about, in addition to him acknowledging what the plight of the current physical condition of the Negro was in his time, he also talked about a free mind, right? And what we can do when our minds get free, what we can imagine and what we can actualize, right? That's a form of Afrofuturism. And so I think it's revolutionary to ask other Black folk, what you dreaming about? What are you thinking about? And how can we get there together? And so the strategy for me as the documenter is to write it down. make sure that we have record, right? Make sure that we have record and a mechanism by which we can track that process, right? But the main question, the critical question I'm asking myself is it still bloody? I don't know.
All right, thank you. Trinity, would you?
Yes. The first thing that kind of came to mind for me, when thinking about revolution is honestly like, what is my relationship to the land in revolution? Within messages to the grassroots, I recall that Malcolm was mentioning that land has been a very core part of just empire and plunder and colonial functions. Like it all revolves around the ownership of the land and its materials. So when I think about revolution for myself, I think about all the ways that this current situation has removed me from the natural world to a point where I have to, second guess where my water supply comes from, or not being aware of where my food is processed and what does it really take for me to be in autonomy with how I feed and nourish myself, and how do I remove that relationship I have with empire. So I think it all does come back to land. And going back to what my colleague spoke about, how, just once again, reiterating the importance of the inner work. Um, when Black folks were enslaved, it wasn't just our bodies, it was our minds, it was our spirits. So I think the role of revolution, therefore, is the disorientation of that, which was brought up before. Like, how do I undo everything that I was enforced to believe? And a part of that belief was that I do not have a right to my humanity. I think the reclaiming of one's humanity is a deep relationship with self, with land. And yeah, I guess my other question towards revolution is, what does revolution look like during the ending of a world? I'm like, not to be an alarmist, but I'm very, very clear that a world is ending and therefore a new world is coming. So what is the role of revolution within that in-between space? What is my role within that with the borrowed time that I do have? And through my care, through my people, how can we move through to bring our desired future into the present? So those are kind of the things that are lingering for me.
I am really satisfied with those questions and those musings.
I got one last one though.
All right, let's have it.
Yes.
And we're
Another
at our
question.
end, so
Got you. How is what's happening in Palestine the same thing as what's happening here? What are the similarities? I do think revolution is bloody because it's happening right now over there. How is it happening over here too? They are being displaced. So are we. From the Nakba to now, 1947 to now. What are the similarities? Can we see that? Can we connect to that? That is our struggle too. How do we make that our struggle continuously?
for me, Malcolm spoke a lot of freeing ourselves, liberating our minds from the prisons that we are in, and by continuing to coming together. And he talked about coming together and identifying who we are. So thank you so very much, Trinity, Adrian, and Orlando.
So we're taking a 5-minute break now, and then the second panel will convene or start. Not be so fancy. Hello, hello.
We ready?
I guess there's gonna be three of us.
Are we ready?
Yes.
Stephen, are you saying anything at all on this second half? All right. Okay, how are we doing? Is this one right here? I have to sit up a little bit. You
Me
wanna come and
too.
get this one? Okay, here we go. So, how's everybody? We're good. We're good. We're going to get right back into the second half of this panel discussion, intergenerational. And I would love for my new guests to introduce themselves. And so, in the vein of being here at the Boggs Center and accepting the challenges and chidings of Grace and Jimmy, we're going to continue that conversation and to search for the liberation of our minds in this space. I'll start all the way over there on the right.
So when you said chiding, I was like, yeah, because you asked me a day ago to be a part of this panel. And of course, I could not say no. So it is a pleasure to be here with you all. There's a lot of new faces in the place. I'm happy to see that because a lot of times we are talking to the same folks in these conversations. My name is Monique. Most people call me Mo. Feel free to do that. My pronouns are she, her, and we. I am an organizer and activist on the east side of Detroit with Speed and Freedom Growers. Give it up. That's home team. Yeah, I've been doing this for 14 years, but I have been a revolutionary all of my life. It is in my veins. Civil disobedience is in my veins. It's in my blood. I love what I do, and I can't see doing things any other way.
Thank you, Monique. I'm Dinah Gibbons Davidson, and I do a lot of things. I don't want to talk about my work today. I really want to talk about my vision for community power building and organizing. I was actually born in 1963, in September of 1963. So I was birthed in a good year of activism, radicalism. And it's exciting to me to see these conversations come full circle because I grew up, and when I turned 18, you had Black Republicans, going for Reaganomics and every kind of thing. And you had the amount of internalized racism and the idea that we were supposed to move on up and we were supposed to be pursuing wealth was a thing. And so I was always sort of an outcast among many people that I went to college with and grew up with. They used to try to insult me and call me Angela Davis, but they didn't understand that was the greatest compliment. And so I'm the granddaughter of Cheever. My grandmother was an activist. She was a radical. My grandmother was arrested in the 1930s fighting for justice in Detroit. She had 4 children, and we actually found newspaper accounts where she was fighting for things. And all of my life, there was a shadow of my grandmother having been stopped. There was an FBI file on her, and my mother felt like she had sacrificed her children for her. And so it skipped a generation from my mother, who felt the loss of her mother, to me, who always appreciated what she did and the sacrifices she made and the vision that she had for a world of justice and peace. And so in my work, I have increasingly moved from trying to do good things inside the community to understanding that you cannot do good things without changing systems and without overthrowing certain types of power, that you have to look beyond the surface. There was a time when I wanted to just do housing, but now I want to do housing and also change how we look at housing, because it's unacceptable that we have people without housing. And then recently, when I began teaching at a university level, I had to learn some more things and research. And 2 things occurred to me. One thing is the beautiful history of Detroit and Black power building in the city of Detroit, which I am so proud that my grandmother was a part of. The second thing is the connection to everything that we're facing, to everything that's happening in the world, and the fact that we cannot cut ourselves off. We can say that we are Detroiters first, we are Americans, and we can even talk about this government as we, and this is one of the things I liked about Malcolm X, especially the grassroots, because it's not really we, it's them. And when we look at how we interface with this, I see myself as being a change agent as much as I can. learning as much as I can, teaching as much as I can, helping people understand things that maybe have not been explained to them, and assisting in the process of unlearning lies that have been told to us and the conditioning that has been laid upon us all of our lives.
Thank you, Donna. What an introduction. I feel like I know you a little bit better. Glad to meet you, Grandma. And I was born in 62. So all of my life has been not knowing Malcolm, but coming to know Malcolm. In the house that I grew up in, you didn't have that kind of radical stuff going on. Right? Just don't participate. That's not safe, right? But as a older Detroiter, I have come to love a revolutionary mindset. I knew of in the 90s when everybody else was being re-educated or being reintroduced to Malcolm. So was I. I was a young mother with children. So with that being said, I'm going to ask this next question. Well, this first question. And this, Monique, is not your favorite.
Haha.
But I'm sure you'll have something to say.
Okay.
How do you see your current work in relation to this moment in Palestine? And we're well aware of what's happening.
I see myself being silenced. I see myself being made to, being shamed by people who want to connect my humanity to anti-Semitism. And it hurts me to believe that I'm living in a world where somehow my voice is, if people are actively trying to suppress my voice. Because when I see people being bombed and I see people being killed, I cannot disconnect that from the genocide that took place in Africa, from the genocide that continues to take place in Africa. I cannot disconnect that from Haitians trying to come here and people then being beat back on horseback. I cannot disconnect that from Black men dying on the streets of Detroit and having people say that nobody broke a law. And so when I see that happen, it hurts my heart and it makes me extremely angry to know that I'm paying a single tax dollar into a government that would do that to other people.
Thank you.
And it also hurts my heart to know that there are people who will regard this somehow as just. People I have respected, people I have cared about, people I looked up to. And yet now I'm looking at them wondering, how can your humanity be so compromised that you can't see this is a problem?
Well, Donna, we don't have to ask why. We don't. Malcolm pretty much said
No,
it.
I mean, yeah, I know.
Yeah, we don't have
know.
to ask why. And I'm glad you mentioned the other struggles for liberation across the globe. You mentioned Haiti. There's actually an exhibit in the Gallery of Revolution housed here at the Boggs Center that speaks directly to what was happening to the Haitians as they were coming here with the horseback and things like that. So the artist in residence right now, well, the artist, her work is Lauren Williams. That's her work in there. And if you would like to, you can visit in that room as
Thank
well. And so, Monique, did you have anything to add to, for our struggles for liberation across the globe and your relation to this moment in history?
Yes. But first, I want to acknowledge to Donna, I can feel you right now. I can. So I extend myself to you.
Thank you.
Wholeheartedly, absolutely. And just to speak frankly, when I first learned about the initial attack, like for a better word, I was like, wow, they went on the offense. Recognizing, I mean, I know people who have personally been to Palestine. I know people who have been organizing with Palestinians for years now. This was not the first that I learned about the struggle in Palestine. So, knowing that it is our duty here to always resist, it's the same thing, but it's in different forms. I don't want to start anyone too deeply with my responses, but I'm not surprised with the retaliation. It needed to be shown because it's not new, and now we cannot ignore it. You have to take a stance. You have to take a stance. Silence is consent. Complacency is unacceptable. And when it comes knocking at our door, what are we willing to do? What are we going to do? We have to recognize it in all of its facets, in all of its forms. Will there be bloodshed? Will there?
So we have a question. And hey, let's take a look at what are some of the questions that the idea of revolution raises for you in your work. So how does revolution show up in your work, or the ideas, and as you talk about what happens where I'm at? Well, how does it look? What does this crisis look like? What does this war on my freedoms or my humanity look like?
We live in a city where there are two Detroits. There's downtown, and then there's the rest of us. Downtown Development Authority captures all of the new revenue that is being produced downtown. All the economic growth is being contained downtown. All of it. And it cannot be spent anywhere but downtown by state law. We live in a city that is over 70% Black. I don't know the actual numbers because I know it's shrinking, but it's still over 70% Black. Most of us don't vote, and most of us don't understand what's going on, what the power structure is. We don't understand the city council has the unique authority to end the Downtown Development Authority and redirect those resources to our neighborhoods. We have got to start speaking truth to power, and we have got to stop being afraid of hurting people's feelings. I was on a panel the other day, and I've been on a lot of panels lately. I was on a panel the other day, and they put me on the panel with somebody from the city and somebody from the state. God bless them. I felt really bad because they were like, well, Donna, we want to talk about racism. Racism is not in the past, so I'm not going to speak of it as if it's history, okay? And I'm not even trying to hurt your feelings. Someone said, well, I can see you're on the attack today. I'm never on the attack. What I am is on the truth. And if truth is your enemy, then that's not my fault, okay? You have to ask yourself whose side you're going to be on. And these are people I like. These are people I might even love you. But if you are afraid to speak truth and hurt people's feelings, we're not even talking about bleeding. We're just talking about hurt feelings. We're talking about people having to stand and have a moral inventory of who they are. And so my work, I think, is to share this information and to take it to city council. I've talked to a couple of city council members. You want to have a conversation with me? Fine. Why haven't you dismantled the Downtown Development Authority? Well, nobody's asked. Okay, fine. Well, you know what? We need to get about asking. We need to stop waiting for people who get elected to these offices and get comfortable to decide to represent us. And we need to decide we're going to represent ourselves. And so for me, revolution starts with changing what we know, changing what we think. But then I think the other thing is I was really moved by this documentary I saw on the Black Panther Party in Fort Deposit, in Lowndes County. My husband is from Fort Deposit, and that's in Lowndes County, but from Lowndes County, Alabama, because the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Council was not a charismatic person in charge of things. It was building up other power in the community and saying, we are going to help support the existing leadership that's here. We're not going to try to take over. And so I think that we have to also be about building coalition, strengthening other people with information and learning from them, because we don't all know anything. And when we come together, if we all came together and made some demands on our city, we could change things right here, right now.
All right. Thank you.
I think Grace Lee Boggs referred to those who have the gall to actually speak truth to power and have the bravery to organize the masses, the very precious few.
Those are her words. You know which piece of literature that came from?
Beyond Malcolm, 1977. I was born in 86. I was born. This is an intergenerational panel, but we must first and foremost revolutionize ourselves within. We have been backward for so long. Do we know which way is forward? Are we going to continue to spin around amongst ourselves? Or are we really going to revolutionize ourselves, then our families, then our communities, and then at large? But the very precious few who have the ability to speak truth to power, the bravery, the brave soul, and the willing body to do that, we must then have a place. And these are why the organizations are so important, because we need a place for people to go once they have revolutionize themselves, because it cannot happen individually. And as a collective body, we can begin to move this thing along and struggle against power.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well,
Wait. After you revolutionize yourself, then you must study. You must continually study. You must study the past, analyze the present, and then have visionary projections of the future.
I'm glad. Yeah, I was gonna one more time.
You must study. You must study. Study the past, critically analyze past as well as the future, and then have visionary projections of the future. And you have to have an ideology to stand upon to then critique the practice that you involve yourself in and the others that you are involved with.
Thank you for that clarity.
And I want to just, I thank you.
Mhm.
I want to just add something because it was talked about. I think Orlando talked about narrative building, right? And what are the narratives we tell ourselves about each other right now? And a lot of it's very flawed. A lot of us have said things like, oh, you know, this person went to a good school, therefore they're smart. Like schools make you smart, or test scores make you smart, or white people make you smart, right? And that's always been flawed. And so we have to unlearn that. We have to understand that we had ancestors who were very intelligent, who didn't go to anybody's school. I think also we have to learn how to humanize our ancestors. We got to stop dehumanizing them. Our ancestors were amazing. One of my favorite books was this book by Michael Harriot, Black AF History. If you haven't read it, read it. If you listen to audiobooks, listen, because he reads it out loud and he's funny. But he talks about what was happening during slavery's time, all the brilliant activists who were there. Intelligence didn't happen in 1865. People were intelligent before 1865. In fact, he describes the Civil War as self-liberation and said that people liberated themselves, and the South won that, the North won the war because African people got involved in that war. So understanding that, I think, is super important. I stopped calling people slaves, and I called they were enslaved. It was a status. It was not a human being, because human beings were doing it then. And yes, there was trauma. Yes, there was harm, but there was humanity. There was culture, even under those conditions. And when we understand that, then we get to love ourselves a little bit better, because we know we came from good stuff. We don't have to fix our history and become the first who did this. We may be the first person who went to college, first person who went to this and did that, but there were some amazing people who, you know, were doing great things, who were just as intelligent as we are. And when we understand that, then we understand that everybody else in our community also shares equal intelligence. And therefore, we all have a part to play. Our intelligence may come differently, but it's equal. God did not make some people good and some people bad, some people smart and some people dumb. God made us all and invests all of us with gifts. We may not always know what those gifts are. And so one of the things I like to do with my staff and other people is I like for people to understand what their gifts are, because I feel like when people understand what their gifts are, they can act in their gift. So that's part of revolutionary organizing, to me, is helping people with that. And it's all about self-love.
I was like, ooh, let me respond to that. So first, who is dehumanizing our ancestors? Because you got a personal problem with somebody at the table.
You've heard people say, you know, it's better than me. They're better than me. If I had been back then, I would have been fighting. Like our ancestors weren't fighting.
Okay.
Other ways that we do things minimize.
There's a lot. Yes.
Can we please remark on the fact that there are some beings who saw other beings as not human at all or less than human? I read something from Audre Lorde, who said that she was pushing her 2-year-old daughter in the shopping cart, and a mother and the daughter who were white rolled past them, and the daughter said, "Oh, mommy, a baby made."
Okay, I get it.
Oh, I know. So that is what we're up against, and that's why the internal revolution has to occur. And that's not just to Black people. That's just not to people who are in the struggle. The internal revolution must occur.
The mental prison, the mental illness, the mental unsustainability of racism runs so deep.
Yeah.
And it's talked about. And it's now you can go and you can have training, the anti-racist training, and you tick the boxes off. But for the revolutionary, And I'm not talking about the bloody part. Understanding who you are as a human being, that revolutionary
Mhm.
part. I think of Malcolm and I think of his evolution from the way he started to where he ended. And he ended too soon. And I think of the work that happens at this place, the revolution with the R in the brackets and the evolution of our humanity. It's a lot of work, and it's anybody can get in, but it's not for those who need it. It's for those who want it. Because if we spend all of our time trying to bring everybody in who need it, where will we get? So it's for those who want to. When Malcolm was talking about the two types of Negroes, you have a house and you have a field. Some of us are really comfortable and complacent with where we are, and we don't want to shake it up. But some of us know this is going to end badly for everybody if I don't do something. So it's the eyes who are doing something, like the eyes in this room, who call ourselves we, who are doing something. And so for me, when it's the question of what am I learning from my work, I learn I can't save everybody, but I'm going to try to save my family. And I know my mother said that. I know my grandmother said that. And my grandmother before that said, I'm going to save my family. That's revolutionary. Because your family is your first community. And you start there and you branch out. And that's what we do. When we come together, I work in my house. I work at FFG in the garden. I work at 291. I work in the Boggs Center. But those values and that love that the school is not going to give us, because the miseducation of the Negro has been going on for how long?
Yeah. I mean, we have to do that. We definitely have to take care of ourselves and our families first. I have the ambition of spreading out, though, and taking care of people who don't know they need it, because I feel as though we need them if we're going to have true revolution. And I feel like we have retreated into our separate corners in this city where these are these people and these are those people. You can't do everything from everybody. A whole lot of people don't know. A whole lot of people just don't know. And if you have a choice, once you know, then you have a choice how to act on it. But I'm going to do my level best to make sure as many people know as I can help know, because I didn't know many things that I now know, and somebody had to help me. And I have family members and I have friends who didn't know, and they're now seeing the world differently. And so I think for me, I don't have permanent. First of all, I look at race as something that white men made up to, or some people call themselves white to create a construct. I don't believe that we have race. I believe that we have humanity. And I think that people are put into categories and castes, right? And sometimes I think that's what the House Negro and Field Negro is really talking about. There's a caste among Black people, right? But I think that right now you have thinking around Black excellence. And every time I hear Black excellence, my skin crawls, right? Because not that I don't think that people have to be excellent, but I think that it always means one thing: upward mobility. It means capitalism. Black excellence is not divorced from capitalism. The other thing they've sold us on is this whole concept of generational wealth. Okay.
So what are we doing around what are we doing strategizing around resources? What is the planning, strategizing, resource gathering? So what are we confronting today around so you're taking care of folks as a service. We provide service, we provide mutual aid. How are we strategizing around the resources? And then that goes right into the question, how do we deal with the fact that transnational corporations are increasingly becoming more powerful? As we are trying to take care of ourselves, our communities, our families, what does that look like?
Well, I think it's important to understand that the bankruptcy didn't harm everybody, and neither did emergency management. A lot of people got rich off of it, and a lot of Black people got over on it. Okay, so I think we have to understand that. In fact, if they didn't put Black caretakers in front of us as emergency managers, or the attorney, more of us would be willing to fight them. But we don't like to fight our own, so we just stay silent. But I think we have to understand the role of financial systems in driving just about every policy that we have right now. The city of Detroit is governed by Standard & Poor's and Moody, because every policy decision that's made at the city level is trying to get the best credit rating possible. And so we've allowed those people who are investors in our city to really have more control of our city than we do. We think we have democracy, but we don't. And so for me, part of it is educating people about that. Now, in terms of care, we, at Eastside Community Network, okay, now it's Eastside Community Network, the organization I run, we have 5 planks. It starts with strengthening our people, and that's the care part of our work, right? Well, that's part of the care part of our work, where we provide resources to help people get their needs met, and we provide spaces for young people to grow and develop in a healthy way. The next part of it is building power, because we've got to help people understand their personal power, learn new things, and then we also provide some resources to invest in the power building activities. The third part of it is cultivating wellness. We now have a 17,000 square foot building that we converted into a wellness hub, and we have 36 classes a week all around wellness, and it's every different the 9 dimensions of wellness, so people can come there for anything that they are looking for. We have Zumba, we have yoga, we have martial arts, we have pottery, we do whatever, and people tell us what they want. We have a BitWiz club, and so that's part of it. And then we also look at restoring neighborhoods. That's where we do the home repair stuff, and then and our business organizing, and then finally we cultivate land and steward land and other resources. So we're going to have an electric vehicle charging station and car share at our site soon, as well as a weather station, so that we can begin tracking our weather. So we do all of these things. People come to our building 3 or 4 times a week. We feed them 3 or 4 times a week, good meals. We pass out meals. We do all of that. And those are things that we do to build relationships, so that when we are in relationship with people, we can then build power with those same people. And I've seen people change and become active as a result of us doing all of those things, because you can't disconnect care from giving. And so I know we try to work in partnership with other people. And it's not all about us, but I think that the change philosophy has to be that you also have an objective of changing people who are not part of you, because we're all in this together, in my view.
All right. You want to tap into that question about resources and strategizing, or where might you want to go with the conversation? It's open.
I just think about what folks take home with them once they utilize services at ECN perhaps, or even Feed and Freedom Growers. And again, the education that is instilled with them and the conversations that we share with each other and how that awakens us. How many of us have ever analyzed the city's budgets for real? How many of us know how much money, how many resources, which is equated to dollars, that the city handles on our behalf? How many people have alternative offerings to what the city puts in place? It's all based on economics. How many of us truly understand economics? How many of us are at the ready? So places like ECN and FFG are critically important, but the people that we engage with, what are we instilling in them? How is that then cultivated with them when they go home? Because we are not really in villages. We are village folk, but we're not within our villages. We have community, but that word can be dissected. What is community for real? Who really is in your community? How many of us really know our neighbors, truly know our neighbors? You know, so again, strategy precedes tactics. What are our tactics along with our strategy? So,
Agreed.
yeah.
And I mean, rebuilding the village is important. Social isolation kills. And people are so socially isolated right now in our community. So many people are afraid of their neighbors, afraid to go outside. People lost their homes. People don't know anything about what's going on in the community, and it's really harming people. And so when you create village places at Feed and Freedom, when we create them at ECN and others in the community, that's also a part of that care community. Sometimes it's just having somebody say hello to you. We have a man who shows up almost every day in a wheelchair. He had a stroke. And when he drives and he's in his wheelchair, most people they just look past him like he doesn't exist. He's a volunteer and a community leader when he comes there. He matters when he comes there. And so we also help people to feel like they matter. We have 80-year-olds who come to work every single day. And they love coming to work because, I feel like I matter again. One of them, one of them lost a son earlier this year, was disabled, couldn't walk, and she's walking around, you know. It's such a beautiful story. I can see that us loving her keeps her alive. And I think that's what we do for each other. That's what you do. I know that you have the Culture Hub and you have so many things that you're doing to keep people alive. And I think when we work together on that across the community, then we're so much stronger than when we're doing it away from each other or separately. So I look forward to opportunities to work with you more closely and others more closely so that we can all do what we do best. There's many things that you do that I have no idea. Like, I don't even know what Reiki is. I don't know how to garden. I don't know how to farm. I'm not musical, but imagine if you did what you did and we did what we did and we were doing it all for the same people. I just think it's really powerful. And so I think let's be together.
So
But
the coalition.
Look, but that's what the investors and the developers and these decision makers miss, and I believe truly are absent amongst them. It's the love, it's the relationships that are formed. It is the lives that can go on. It is the it doesn't even have a word. Everybody know what that is, you know. So, and that Coach Kellogg knows.
So
And that's why our places are so important. That's why it is so critical to do what we do.
So I'm going to thank Malcolm for the message to the grassroots, because it gave us a segue or a way to have a message from the grassroots. Thank you. And
That was our time.
that much. Yeah, it felt good, huh? Time flies when you're having fun. But this is the time where we turn into audience participation.
Yeah.
And so don't forget that there's still Adrian in the room, Orlando is in the room, and Trinity, right? Okay.
Mr. Sloan made it.
Mr. Sloan is here.
John Sloan.
That's okay. Yeah, John was supposed to have been up here at this time. Would you like to come up? We have a seat. So we can just say hi to you at least. You know, yeah. John's a good brother. And so, John, you want to just say why you were late, or you just want to say hi?
What? That's the mama for you. Thank you, Mama Myrtle.
Hey everybody, how we doing?
Right.
Apologies, Mama, for running late. I do a lot of things. I'm one of the lead organizers for the Detroit chapter Black Lives Matter. I am in leadership with Detroit Safety Team, and I went to school for musical theater, and I have a theater and film production company, which is also why I was late, because I was running a rehearsal over in Oak Park for a new musical that goes up at the music hall in December. And Oak Park is not necessarily around the corner, so that is why I apologize. Schedules got behind, and I'm grateful to be here. So. Yeah, the show is called One Sleepy Night Detroit. It's a Christmas musical. It's a really nice, fun, light show, and I say that because most of the stuff I direct is like deep and serious and heavy, and this is not that. This is a good time. So. Yep.
Thank you. I know it wasn't. I realized that Oak Park or wherever you're coming from is not around the corner. And so just to get you in the room, you know, yes. So, and I was just saying that now it's a time where we have audience participation, but I really thank Donna and Monique for holding it down with the conversation.
Thank you.
And I can't help but to go back to Orlando and Trinity and Adrian with narrative and storytelling. And that is so important, because when you were talking about the elder who is up and at 'em now, you were light.
Yeah.
It feels good to be the storytellers for our people.
Yeah.
And good stories, you know. So
Can I just say something? We had a healing retreat. Somebody drove their car into our building and got away with, they get away with it, but they didn't get whatever. They drove their car intentionally into our building and they were armed. And it was really, really, really devastating for us. And so the staff, there was people inside the building, little kids inside the building. And so we had a healing retreat. And we went to the Bloom Transformation Center. And I said, Dr. Rose, can you help us? And I just want to say that she did sound healing activity. And then she did some conversation. And the next week, this woman walked into my office with no cane. And she says, Diana, I just realized I can walk. And so I also want to give it up to Dr. Rose Moten and other people who engage in, alternative medicines and other healing practices, understanding that there was real resistance from some of my staff team. They were like, oh no, we don't want to do this because it's against my religion. And I was like, well, if this is against your religion to go here, how do you work for me? Because we're going to be doing more of that stuff here. So you have to really think that through. It's fine. You have the right to your own religion. But if you don't believe in alternative medicines and the other kind of healing practices, this is probably not a good place for you. So she ended up coming anyway, but it was just beautiful to see her walk. And then I have another senior who said that her foot has stopped hurting. And it was just the lightness and connectedness that happened between all of us. And it was a lot of storytelling that day. So you're right, it is a healing place, and it lifted me.
All right. Thank you. So Stephen, you're going to help out with?
Yes. So, and a reminder that we are live streaming. So we have this mic. We'll pass the mic around. And again, reminder that we're live streaming. So please do use the mic to make sure it can be picked up. So if anyone has any responses to what's been said, contributions to the conversation, let's please offer them.
This is not really a response, but I feel that this is a very good place for me to share an actual experience. My son, Mr. Pope, spent 6 months in the Netherlands. When he returned home, the mother of the house wanted to visit us. So she came here and stayed with us for 2 weeks. Miguel took her from the worst part of Detroit, in between, and the best part of Detroit. She held back something she wanted to say for those 2 weeks till we got to the airport for her to return home. And she said, Shirley, there's something I want to tell you. Right on my way, my heart sank, oh Lord, here goes another bad about Detroit. No, I was way off course. She said, Shirley, nothing, and I mean nothing, was like what people told me about Detroit. That was such a good feeling that she could come and see for herself that Detroit is really not as bad as a lot of people say. We're like anywhere else. We have our good areas, we have our bad areas, and people have to understand that.
Thank you. And just to piggyback on what she said, one of the things that was interesting is that when I visited the family and showed them pictures of where we stay at, the only thing that they saw, I was in a small town, the only picture they saw was Sanford and Son.
Oh.
That's how they thought we lived. Wow. So this was a really big introduction to here's the real way that Black folk live in the U.S. and in Detroit in particular. I wanted to talk about, my head is really racing with so many things that I heard that I wanted to talk about. So I'm going to try to encapsulate them in a question and a comment. So Orlando talked about this narrative and that we have to change the narrative, and we're not using a deficit, and we have to start using an asset frame to talk about what's going on. But one of the things that I find very challenging is that we ourselves don't use that asset framing to just discuss who we are. And then when we're talking to people about, oh, my son is this and my son is that, well, your son is not that. Your son is a brilliant student who just doesn't happen to have a father. Or your daughter is a pregnant woman who has a lot of life in front of her. Right. Not that she's a single mom, and not a bad thing. So we have to start talking about ourselves in a way that's positive. And all money is not good money. So when you go to a grant funder who says, I'm going to give you money for disadvantaged kids, no, that's not what we're doing. I can tell you who we're serving, and can you change your language for me to get that grant? We have to make those stances in order to change the narrative, but we have to stop downplaying ourselves. The last thing I'll say, I may say something later. I work with an organization that has been participating in a lot of the neighborhood advisory council meetings for the future of health. And one of the asks that was made of them, of the NAC, those 9 members representing the community, predominantly Black community, is will you look at this project through an equity race lens? Do you know what they said? Most of them, no. And we're like, how can you say no to looking at this project through an equity race tool? And unfortunately, some of the folks said, well, I've been Black all my life, I don't think I need it. I get you've been Black all your life, but this is so that we will all be in the same book, on the same page, looking at and evaluating this project the same way. And so we still have some work to do.
We got work.
We
have work. Thank you. We have work.
Hold up the mic. Then go over here.
Okay.
Hold up the mic.
Okay. I got a couple things. First of all,
Coach wrote his down.
oh yeah, I had to take notes. Donna, I was told to come talk to you, but you be making me want to cry. Tears coming out my eyes, make me feel all mushy. but again, I think a question that this young man said, do blood still need to be shed? It doesn't have to be the blood that comes out of our veins, but it can be the tears that comes out of our eyes, right? And something else I wanted to share with you. You said you had to change your mindset. Well, as we grow, we all change our mindsets, because if I thought the way I used to think, I wouldn't be the man that I am today. So and my sister, the empathy that you have for the people over in Palestine, I have it too. And so together, we got to make a change, right? And my last thing is, the last two things. One, our votes do count. And so we got to tell people about voting, right? And the last thing, you bust my bubble with that downtown development. So when I come and see you, we got to remind me on that one, because a change is coming. Y'all just got to prepare and wait to see it. It's coming.
Oh. But can I just respond to that? Our votes count when we put justice on the ballot. When justice is not on the ballot, then all we're doing is just choosing between Tweedledee and Tweedledum. We have the power to not just respond to what these people bring to us, but to tell them what we want and need and demand. And that, to me, is when our votes will count. And I bet you will have more than 20% of Detroiters voting if they ever had something to vote for.
Something to vote for, someone to vote for, something to believe in.
How would you actually make voting a revolutionary tactic? Because right now it is not revolutionary. Oh, sorry. Oh. How do you actually make voting a revolutionary tactic? Because right now it is not a revolutionary tactic. I'm gonna quickly throw in a quote. This is from my comrade Erica Kane. Shout out Hood Communist. Shout out just shout out everything that she's doing, Black Alliance for Peace. With that said, the continued false belief in voting as a tactic, void of acknowledging that some tactics do not work, at least not right now, has perpetuated the intracommunal divide that exists in the struggle for power. The Black masses, influenced by bourgeoisie media and a political apparatus, deeply deprived of concrete political education, are often left overlooking the forest for the trees. In other words, the devil you know becomes less of a saying and more of a creed. In the panic-driven vote blue, no matter who. Any power the Black vote may have has been contained under the false dichotomy of Democrat versus Republican. There has never been a choice for a Black America characterized by distortion, self-denying censorship, and punishment of nonconformity. Choice is dependent upon the power to choose. When both parties' histories contain monstrous assaults on Black life in the U.S., then we do not have choice. All right.
That one word that stuck out for me was conformity, and there's far too much.
Are we going to analyze the ballot or the bullet next?
That's a good one.
I do not condone violence. Let me just say that for the record. And I too have said it, and I believe that enough blood has been shed. Enough blood has been shed. I took a vow of silence at one point, not silence as consent, but I have felt at a time enough has been said, even not another word, but conversations like this is necessary.
Hi.
Sorry there. No, I am here with my partner Tamika. We're from Mother and Justice, and we're voter engagement organizers. And part of our struggle has been trying to motivate people who are jaded from voting policies. I know often we try to shame non-voters. We blame them. You're the reason, this is why. But I think that when we get into changing that narrative, right, we must acknowledge things that have gone awry in the past. And I think to piggyback with what Donna was saying, it was like, we vote, who's for us, who looks like us, and those might not be the best tactics to use. And so I ran across We were in Warren, I think, for the Warren election the other day, and I ran across a young man who said, you know, excuse me, Miss Austin, whether it's George Bush or whether it's Barack Obama, I still got to eat. I still got to get out here and hustle. And, you know, it just kind of like, it startled me, but I'm like, I said, like a true Detroiter, but how do we reach these, you know, young people or voters of all ages to motivate them when this system has been broken and has let them out? So left them out. So just thank you. I just wanted to make a comment as we gather for the new election cycle that's coming up.
I hear, go ahead, John. No.
Hey everybody, jumping into the conversation. So voting is something I go back and forth on, and I vote in almost every election, but the ones to me that are the most important aren't the Barack Obama versus George W. Bush. There are city council elections, and they're the school board elections, and those are also the ones where injustice and systemic forces where money and outside influence are present is most immediately and most powerfully felt, right? And so when you have outside, and I came in at the end, but when you have outside influence, when you have special interests that are influencing school board elections, that are influencing the way that our districts are being redrawn, that for me, if I don't vote anywhere else, if I don't participate in any other process, it's in that process to try to undo those things and start most immediately. I'm not disagreeing that there is a lesser of two evils conversation that we have, that we should not blindly as Black folks just give our votes to the Democratic Party, nor do I think the Democratic Party has done demonstratively anything powerful for Black folks recently, if ever. But I do think that there's a way in which there's a certain type of participation in a system that can be beneficial if we're clear as to what our goals are and to what undoing is necessary to be able to allow us to leverage tools that can be at our resource, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, we got our city council person elected, and we had a celebration, but we didn't send her there with a mandate and clear expectations, and we don't have an accountability structure. And so votes are being held downtown. It's like, wait a minute, didn't I vote for you? Still, my girl, I'm still trying to educate her, right? But it's after the fact. I think that we have to be more intentional. I'm actually working on a project, and hopefully some of you all will join me, the Black Detroit Democracy Project, which is all about trying to work with non-voters to better understand their needs and expectations, identify some things, and get people involved, not just in voting, but also in showing up at meetings and making challenges that way, petition drives, and ballot initiatives, because ballot initiatives are on the ballot too, and we very rarely put something on the ballot that is overriding the people we elect. So I hope that some of you will sign up.
Okay. I hear in the future a conversation around power that needs to happen, because we need to understand what power is and how do we tap into that power collectively. So look for that to be happening. Yes.
So Mama Myrna, you're calling for you're opening up the possibility of that to be a future conversation that we, all of us here in the room and on the stream, could be part of. Mo, you just asked a question, which perhaps was also an invitation as well. You said, are we going to analyze the ballot of the bullet?
I did.
Which is referring to Malcolm X's other most well-known speech, along with Message to the Grassroots, the ballot of the bullet, which he also gave in Detroit. He gave a version of it in Cleveland, and the written text that survives is from that speech, but he gave in Detroit, also at King Solomon Baptist Church, Malcolm X gave his ballot of the bullet speech in the spring of 1964. And the context of that, so in some ways that follows up on his message to the grassroots. And in fact, some of what he said in that speech revised or even challenged or contradicted some of the things he said in the message to the grassroots. For instance, in the ballot of the bullet speech, he questioned if revolution had to be bloody. And the point here is not to, but one is to, one example of what Mama Myrtle spoke of, which is Malcolm was evolving. And more importantly for us, it's the context in which he gave the ballot of the bullet speech. So that was the spring of 1964. So again, Message of the Grassroots, November 10th, 1963, the ballot or the bullet, and that title suggests the context. Spring of 64, a major presidential election year. Also, an important part of the context was the emergence of a new political formation called the Freedom Now Party. So some activists from the East Coast around the time of the March on Washington in August of '63 had devised the idea to create an all-Black political party to advance Black people's interests as part of the evolving civil rights movement and anticipating the Black Power movement. So those activists came, they were actually part of the conference, the North Negro Grassroots Leadership Conference, which was the context for Malcolm's Grassroots speech. And in fact, it was including them, which led as part of the conflict between Reverend Clegg and Reverend Franklin that led the Boggses and the Henry brothers and their organization, the Group on Advanced Leadership, to host this conference. So it's very much part of the emerging politics of this period. Final point I want to emphasize is that Malcolm's Ballot of Bullets speech and the idea for the Freedom Now Party were all of them in that time devising new frameworks, new organizations, new ideas in the context of what was happening then to advance the struggle. And that seems to be what we're all talking about. So if we do have a conversation on the Ballot of the Bullet or inspired by that speech, then it can, just as we're doing now, it can help us to think not just how to reproduce what they did, but to use that same method of investigating, or as you said, Mo, studying our history to help us understand where we are, analyzing the present to give us a good critical understanding, and then projecting, and ultimately the most important part is projecting where we want to go.
Wasn't the Black Slate an outgrowth of that?
Yes, the Black Slate, among other things, Reverend Clegg, who was then still known as Reverend Clegg, was one of the main leaders of the Freedom Now Party. So the Freedom Now Party launched, they did a massive organizing effort to get on the ballot. And in Michigan is the only state where the party actually achieved that. They didn't win any elected offices, but yes. So that organizing is one of the steps that led to the Black Slate. And in between the shrine took this name, and the Black Slate is in part grew out of that. And I'm not calling for electoral politics as a vehicle for revolutionary change. In fact, as some have said, I don't think it is. I'm saying that critical assessment of where we are and what we need in this time is what's needed.
But it has been though, right?
What has been?
I mean, I think that the ballot has been a mechanism for significant change, if not revolutionary change, not recently, not in recent history, but there are times when the ballot has created great change in our nation. And I think that it is not now, but I think that's a future conversation that Mo recommended. Yeah. I think let's have that because I think it's important for us to really think that through.
So I think we're at that time. And we have a tradition around this part that we close with one word from everyone. One word to summate where we're at. And it's your word that we're gonna put all these words together. And I think we should start right there.
And we want to get you, make sure you're in stream. So camera, our friends on the camera.
Yay.
Okay. Good.
So we're gonna end at the purple shirt. So we're gonna waft this way.
Love.
Care.
Strategy. Dialectic.
Well, I'm sorry, I was beautiful.
Present. Passion.
Tired.
Peace.
Unity.
Powerful.
Family.
Centered.
Strategy.
Together.
Illuminating.
Movement.
Advancement.
Spirit.
Expanding.
Service. Good. Dialogue.
Life.
Together. Community.
Learning.
Anishinaabe.
Continuum.
Mobilize. Power.
Determination.
Together.
Justice.
All power to the people.
Thank you, everyone. And we want to thank Detroit is Different for facilitating the live stream.
Thank you. And everyone have a safe good night.
Good night, everybody.